more employment support for people to help them to get into work, increases to the national minimum living wages, and strengthening rights and protections at work, making work pay more secure and fair through our Employment Rights Act. New jobs created, better jobs, higher wages, all because of this Labour government.
Bill Jones.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Free school meals for children, our universal credit uplift and up to £575 more on the state pension, thanks to protecting the triple lock, are all great examples of how Labour governments at both ends of the M4 are helping with the cost of living. But can the Secretary of State update the House on the steps that the government is taking to ensure that in the future nobody gets trapped in a cycle of poverty, whether in my constituency of Merthyr Tydfil and Aberdare or indeed across the country?
I thank my honourable friend for his question. Now, whether it's children, young families or pensioners, young people, families or pensioners, this Labour government is determined to tackle the cost of living both for his constituents and for all our constituents. We inherited a broken welfare system from the Conservatives that has failed people and trapped them in a cycle of poverty, and we will not allow that to continue. So that's why we're helping people into work with new employment programmes, increasing universal credit for those who need support, 700,000 pensioners being helped with a state pension rise, as he mentioned. We are absolutely laser-focused on tackling the cost of living.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I thank the Minister very much for that? Labour has done much for addressing the issue of child poverty, for example, but the issue of heating oil and fuel and red diesel, it's the same in Wales as it is in Northern Ireland and indeed across this great United Kingdom. The price of red diesel for farmers in the rural locations, the price of red diesel for the fishing sector, and the price of diesel for HGV lorries. So what's the Minister doing to help those three sectors to ensure that the economy can survive? If they do that in Wales, then they'll have to do it in Northern Ireland as well.
I thank my honourable friend for acknowledging the work that this government has done on the cost of living. He mentions red diesel. That continues to benefit from an 80% tax discount, which is saving farmers almost £300 million a year. We've already brought in a 5p fuel duty cut from this month until September. We've raised industry concerns about red diesel prices, and I know that my colleague has also met with farming unions about red diesel. We have looked at price transparency with the Competitions and Market Authority, and we are keeping everything under careful review.
Shadow Secretary of State, Mims Davis.
Well, let's have some reality, because it's Labour's cost of living crisis which is hitting families across Wales. It's vital both governments do all it takes to ease these pressures, yet the Welsh Labour government still chooses to spend over £100 million on more politicians, tens of millions on a default 20-mile-per-hour speed limit, and vanity embassies abroad, and millions on tree planting in Uganda. Mr Speaker, these are not the priorities of struggling families. Will the Secretary of State finally condemn the wasteful spending of taxpayers' money and admit these schemes do not address the cost of living crisis in Wales?
Well, Mr Speaker, I'm really surprised that the honourable member has raised the issue of the expansion of the Senedd, because the accepted rationale of those who support the expansion is because it was necessary to improve scrutiny of the Welsh Government. What a terrible indictment of the inadequate performance of her party, whose job it has been, as the opposition in the Senedd for the last 27 years, to carry out that scrutiny.
Liz Savile-Roberts.
Iawn, Lefarydd. Families in Wales under Labour are struggling. Inflation on bills, wages flatlining, and childcare costs are higher there than anywhere else in the UK. Plaid Cymru's universal childcare offer would be a game changer. At full rollout, this universal offer will be worth more than £30,000 per child, and it has been independently assessed as both affordable and deliverable. Does she recognise how Labour's chronic lack of ambition are keeping families in Wales in poverty?
Plaid's manifesto, and specifically their childcare policy that she refers to, exposes the fact that they are not on the side of working people in Wales. They're not serious about tackling the cost of living. The Institute for Fiscal Studies has been clear that Plaid would have to make spending cuts or raise taxes to pay for their unfunded manifesto pledges. And that's at a time when families are dealing with the cost of living. They'll be hiking taxes and slashing spending on child poverty, which will make families worse off. Families in Wales deserve better than a manifesto of economic fiction.
Liz Savile-Roberts.
The Secretary of State's tight-lipped quibbling is just an excuse, a shadow of an apology for what her party has failed to do for being in power for the last 27 years. And it's no surprise to anybody that voters are ready for a change. Last night's YouGov poll shows that Plaid Cymru and Reform UK are neck and neck in Wales, with Labour trailing far behind. Will she accept that a vote for Labour on May the 7th risks handing power to Reform UK, who will wreck our NHS, and recognise that only Plaid Cymru can stop this?
The answer to that question is no.
Borough Clerk.
Question 4, Mr. Speaker.
Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Creating high-quality jobs across Wales is a priority for this government. Wales is now punching above its weight in attracting investment, with 65 new foreign direct investment projects creating nearly 2,500 jobs in 2024 to 2025. That includes over 500 jobs in North Wales from Erin Holdings, Knauf Insulation and Kellogg's, alongside hundreds more in South Wales, driven by Vichy's £250 million semiconductor cluster investment.
Borough Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, one of the issues which sets Labour apart from the parties opposite is the sheer number of jobs, new jobs we are creating in priority areas like tech, like defence and our green industries. In constituencies like mine in Enfield North, across Wales and the rest of the UK. So can the Secretary of State update the House on the new jobs being created in Wales and the opportunities this will provide for every family?
I thank my honourable friend for recognising the scale of opportunities and new jobs that this government is creating in Wales and across the UK. So whether it's 3,000 jobs in new nuclear, 5,000 jobs in floating offshore wind, 8,000 jobs in our 2 AI growth zones, 12,000 jobs in our historic £14 billion commitment for Welsh Rail, and 25,000 jobs in our free ports and investment zones, we are delivering generational change for people in Wales.
Rebecca Smith.
Mr. Speaker, in Wales, the South West and across the UK, nearly 1 million young people are not in education, employment or training. Labour's jobs tax, failed welfare reforms and damaging energy policies will worsen this crisis. Does the Minister recognise that when the Labour government's first response to any crisis is to tax business, they stop hiring, and it is young people in Wales who suffer most?
The honourable lady might like to know that unemployment in Wales is lower than the UK average and has fallen from this time last year. Youth unemployment is also lower than the UK average, and it shows that our plan to boost the Welsh economy is working. We're creating jobs, helping people into jobs right across Wales.
Secretary of State Mims Davies.
The bedrock of our country's defence rests on our crucial membership of NATO. The defence industry in Wales employs more than 15,000 people, well-paid and important roles. Yet the separatists Plaid, along with the Greens, oppose full membership of this deterrent, whilst Reform bizarrely claim all sorts of things, like blaming NATO for provoking war in Ukraine. Mr. Speaker, will the Secretary of State stand up for NATO, more Welsh defence jobs, and for the thousands in Welsh communities that rely on growing employment in this crucial sector?
That's exactly what we're doing, Mr. Speaker. I refer the honourable lady to the answers given on the questions relating to defence earlier in this session.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question number 5, please.
The Prime Minister has announced a generational funding commitment to Welsh Rail and a pipeline of projects valued at £14 billion. This long-term plan will transform connectivity across Wales, and we will deliver at pace, building on the strong start of at least £445 million of investment secured at the spending review.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my honourable friend for that answer. The UK Labour government's generational commitment to a £14 billion pipeline of rail projects in every part of Wales is a clear demonstration of what can be achieved when two Labour governments are working together. And the investment from the spending review has resulted in upgrades at Cardiff West Junction, which is set to double City Line services, benefiting stations in my constituency. But incredibly, Clyde have promised to tear up this much-needed plan and start again. So would the Minister update the House and myself on the impact Labour's rail investment for Wales will have for my constituents and for the people of Wales?
Can I thank my honourable friend for pointing this out? The UK and Welsh Labour government's £14 billion plan for rail unlocks and delivers the transport network that Wales needs and deserves, bringing 12,000 jobs, boosting our economy and making journeys faster and more frequent. And there is a plan of 43 projects for every corner of Wales, including burn stations in the southeast, electrification to Holyhead, the Swansea Metro, the Marches Line. While parties opposite want to put these plans on hold, the reality is our two Labour governments are working together to deliver transformational change for the people of Wales.
And Davies.
Diolch yn fawr, Mr Llefarydd. Labour Senedd manifesto makes no mention of the billions of HS2 funding owed to Wales. Welsh Labour have given up on the argument, as the Secretary of State did after she took office. HS2 no longer exists, were her words. Can the Minister please explain why Wales isn't having fair funding for rail?
I don't know if the member opposite heard my answer just now, talking about £14 billion commitment across Wales, which the party opposite, and I'm sure she doesn't agree with her party's plan to rip up this £14 billion commitment to rails, robbing Wales and our communities of a generation of rail investment, connecting communities and delivering jobs right across Wales.
Catherine Vokes.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Question 6.
Where are we?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. This government is creating tens of thousands of high-quality jobs across Wales, from offshore wind in the Celtic Sea, nuclear power at Wilver, AI growth zones, free ports, investment zones, rail enhancements, a defence growth deal and the steel strategy. Our vision for economic growth in Wales is unashamedly ambitious and is already delivering results.
Folks.
I was pleased to see the Secretary of State and the First Minister launch the Local Growth Fund in Wales this week, and to boost jobs and investment in local economies. This is on top of the local Welsh placemaking grant funding and the UK Government's Pride in Place funding, which gives £1.5 million to my constituency, which will improve 6 Monmouthshire towns. Will the Secretary of State update the House on how our two Labour governments are working together to invest in our Welsh communities?
My honourable friend, Mr Speaker, is right. My honourable friend is right that this Labour government's over £500 million local growth fund will fuel economic growth in every corner of Wales. It will support people to start and to grow their businesses. It will help people to secure new skills and jobs. It will revitalise Welsh communities. And it's a great example of what can be achieved with two Labour governments working together.
One way to support growth in Wales and indeed in Shropshire is to support the Wrexham, Shropshire and Midland Railway Company open access application to the Office and Rail and Road. So would the Secretary of State make a commitment today, similar to that of the Transport Secretary, that the government will not get in the way of this application and allow growth in both Shropshire and in Wales and in the border market towns?
I have to apologise to the honourable member. I didn't hear the first part of his question, but I'm very happy to chat with him afterwards, or if he writes me, and I'll give him a full answer.
Before we come to Prime Minister's questions, may I extend a warm welcome to the Speaker of the Latvian Parliament and her delegation who are with us in the gallery today. We now come to questions to the Prime Minister. Mike Wood.
Question 1, Mr Speaker.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Queen Elizabeth II devoted her life to public service. As we mark the 100th anniversary of her birth, I'm delighted her extraordinary reign will be marked by a permanent memorial. Mr. Speaker, in recent days, we've seen a series of despicable anti-Semitic arson attacks. With additional funding to deploy specialist officers, a fundamental reset of how we counter extremism, an action to tackle the poison of anti-Semitism in our schools, our colleges and the NHS, we will do everything in our power to keep British Jews safe. And I'm sure the whole House will join me in standing with our Jewish community. There is no place in British life for anti-Semitism. Mr. Speaker, today my thoughts are also with the family of Stephen Lawrence, murdered in a racist attack 33 years ago today. We honour his legacy in the fight against racism and providing opportunity for every young person. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with Minister colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Can the Prime Minister deny that Downing Street considered appointing Matthew Doyle to a diplomatic position?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Matthew Doyle worked for many years in public service, for me as Prime Minister and other ministers. When people leave roles in any organisation, there are often conversations about other roles they want to apply for, but nothing came of this.
Today marks the murder, the racist murder of my friend's brother, Stephen Lawrence. Tomorrow is St George's Day. Does my right honourable friend agree with me that now, more than ever, we need to tell the story, the positive story, of Englishness, founded in who we are and not of who the far right would like us to be?
Can I thank him for raising this? Of course, it was 33 years ago today that awful murder took place. Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to have worked alongside Baroness Lawrence for many years now. She is an incredibly courageous and inspiring campaigner, notwithstanding all of the injustices that have been thrown to her in the last 33 years. We do celebrate St George's Day, we fly our flag, we celebrate this country's values of service, generosity and respect. They, Mr. Speaker, are English values, which is why I love this country so much. There are those that seek to divide us, who tell us people are not welcome and try to rip our communities apart. We will never let them, Mr. Speaker. We stand together, united, and against any challenges that we may face.
Timmy Bearnott, the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Prime Minister stand by his statement at the dispatch box on the 10th of September last year that full due process was followed in the appointment of Peter Mandelson as our ambassador to Washington?
Yes, I do. Mr. Speaker, let me make clear at the outset that the appointment itself was a mistake. It was my mistake. I've apologised to the victims for it, and I do so again. What I set out to the House on Monday is that Foreign Office officials granted security clearance to Mandelson against the recommendation of UK security vetting. Yesterday, Sir Ollie Robbins was asked if he shared that decision with me, Number 10, or any other ministers. He gave a clear answer, no. Mr. Speaker, that puts to bed all the allegations levelled at me by those opposite in relation to dishonesty. Last week they were all saying that it must have been shared with me. Sir Ollie was very clear yesterday it was not. I believe not sharing it was a serious error of judgment. That information should have been shared with me and other ministers. And if it had been, Mandelson would not have been committed to post.
Mr. Speaker, it does not put to bed anything. On the 11th of November 2024, long before any vetting had happened, the Prime Minister received advice from Simon Case, the then Cabinet Secretary. The advice said the appointment would require, and I quote, the necessary security clearances before confirming the Prime Minister's choice. This advice was ignored. So how can the Prime Minister still believe that confirming Mandelson before the security clearances was following full due process?
Mr. Speaker, this was looked into by Sir Chris Wormold. I asked him to review the appointment process, including the vetting. He confirmed, Mr. Speaker, his words, appropriate processes were followed. She's put great weight on the order of events. I remind her what Sir Chris said last November in evidence to the House. He said this, and I quote, "When we are making appointments from outside the civil service, the normal thing is for security clearance to happen after appointment, but before the person signs a contract and takes up post." That is what happened in this case. Sir Ollie Robbins himself, Mr. Speaker, also gave evidence, and he said, and I quote, "As is normally the case with external appointments in his department, the appointment was made subject to obtaining security clearance." Mr. Speaker, on top of that, Sir Ollie Robbins has made clear that the fact that developed vetting was after the announcement made, in his words, no material difference to the conclusion that was reached. And Mr. Speaker, I add this, that what Sir Ollie Robbins wrote to the committee yesterday was this, and I quote, "When the Prime Minister informed the House that the proper process had been followed in respect of national security vetting, he was correct."
It's very interesting that he mentions Chris Wormold. He is relying on advice given to him after Mandelson was sacked by a cabinet secretary the Prime Minister then sacked. That is not relevant. I'm talking about the advice he was given before the appointment. He keeps mentioning Sir Ollie Robbins. Sir Ollie Robbins told us that the Prime Minister even sought clearance from His Majesty the King before the vetting. He'd already got agreement from the US administration. The chair of the Select Committee said that. Mandelson was a done deal. Yesterday, Sir Ollie Robbins said that the focus was on getting Mandelson out to Washington quickly. He said the Prime Minister's team showed a dismissive attitude to vetting. And they even argued Peter Mandelson didn't need any vetting at all. This clearly wasn't proper process. Why was due process not followed?
Mr. Speaker, let me deal with this directly, particularly this question of pressure in relation to the decision to appoint and to put into post Peter Mandelson. So Ollie Robbins could not have been clearer in his evidence yesterday. He said this, I didn't feel under pressure personally in terms of my judgment. His words. Mr. Speaker, he went on to say, I have complete confidence that recommendations to me and the discussions we had and the decision we made were rigorously independent of any pressure. Mr. Speaker, on top of that, he was asked if any conversations led him to believe that Mandelson needed to take up the role regardless of vetting outcome. He said, I can say with certainty it was never put to me in that way. No pressure existed whatsoever in relation to this case. What is unacceptable is that the recommendation of UKSV was not given to me before Mandelson took up his post.
Mr. Speaker, we all heard what Sir Ollie Robbins said yesterday. The fact of the matter is that the Prime Minister spent a lot of time telling us just how furious he was to learn that Mandelson failed the vetting, the same Prime Minister who was trying to get him to Washington without any vetting at all. It's just unbelievable. The reason the Cabinet Secretary advised the Prime Minister to carry out full vetting before the appointment, this is common sense, Mr. Speaker, carry out full vetting before the appointment, was to protect our national security. The due diligence document said Mandelson remained on the board of the Kremlin-linked defence company Sistema long after Putin's first invasion of Ukraine in 2014. The Prime Minister told us on Monday that he'd read that due diligence report. Why did the Prime Minister want to make a man with links to the Kremlin our ambassador in Washington?
Well, Mr. Speaker, let me deal with the first allegation she put in that question. It was always the case that would be developed vetting in this case. That was the understood process that was carried out. It was reviewed by Sir Chris Wormold, and he said it was the appropriate process. Sir Ollie was absolutely clear that nobody put pressure on him to make this appointment, either, whatever the sequence, or developed a vetting. In relation to what was in the due process, any issues of national security are dealt with in the developed vetting process. I knew that. Peter Mandelson received clearance through that process. The problem was, as I said to the House, I was unaware that UKSV recommended against clearance. That is information that should have been brought to my attention. Mr. Speaker, they recommended with red flags that there shouldn't be clearance, and it was high concern. That information should have been made available to me at the time and subsequently. The fact that it wasn't was a very serious error of judgment.
I don't know what planet the Prime Minister is on, Mr. Speaker. Appointing someone with known links to the Kremlin is not full due process. If anybody had brought that sort of name to me when I was a Secretary of State, I would have said, no way. The Prime Minister thought someone with Kremlin links was still probably OK. Let's do some vetting. Why does this matter? He keeps leaning on Sir Ollie Robbins, a man he sacked. He keeps leaning on him. Sir Ollie Robbins said yesterday that Peter Mandelson was given access to highly classified briefings even before he'd received clearance. That was a clear national security risk. How can the Prime Minister still maintain that full due process was followed?
Mr. Speaker, as a member of the House of Lords and Privy Councillor, and in accordance with guidance, documentation could have been provided to him and was provided to him. Strap material comes after developed vetting, but because he was a Privy Councillor, he could have access to other material before developed vetting.
This is a joke. He says a member of the House of Lords. Does he mean people like Matthew Doyle? Yeah. I'm amazed. Yes, right. I am amazed at the level of chuntering from Labour MPs. He promised them probity. What he's given them is cronyism and an old boys' club where Matthew Doyle is being proposed as an ambassador. Ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Mr. Speaker, we all heard Sir Ollie Robbins' testimony yesterday. The head of the Foreign Office was sacked for the Prime Minister's own failings. His backbenchers know that is not fair. Even his most loyal cabinet members won't defend it. The Prime Minister did not follow the process the Cabinet Secretary set out in November 2024. He knows he did not follow due process, yet he told the House he had. Mr. Speaker, I cannot accuse the Prime Minister of deliberately misleading the House, but everyone can see what has happened here. This was not due process. Everyone knows the price of misleading the House. Will the Prime Minister finally take responsibility and go?
Well, Mr. Speaker, let's be absolutely clear. Before Mandelson took up his post, UKSV recommended with red flags that clearance should be denied, and there was high concern that that was not brought to my attention or the attention of the Foreign Secretary at the time or subsequently is a very serious error of judgment, and anyone in my position would have lost confidence in the former Permanent Secretary. But, Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition claimed on Friday that Mandelson could not have been cleared against security advice. She was wrong about that. She said that ministers must have been told. She was wrong about that. She claimed there was deliberate dishonesty. She was wrong about that. Wrong. She rushed to judgment as she always did, just like the Iran war. Mr. Speaker, I was elected by the British people because they let the country down for 14 long years. Whatever she says, whatever noise they make, nothing is going to distract me from delivering for our country.
In contrast to the preoccupations of the Leader of the Opposition, my constituents are more concerned with the NHS and waiting lists. Thanks to this government, across England, waiting lists are coming down. In my part of the country, waiting lists have fallen by 13,000 in the past year alone. After years of Tory failure, we're getting the NHS back on its feet. Can the Prime Minister share with me what further plans we've got to get waiting lists down even more and to make sure that we've once again got a health service to be proud of?
Well, the party opposite should hang their heads in shame at the state they left our NHS in. And I'm proud that this Labour government is fixing our NHS across the country. Waiting lists, Mr Speaker, the lowest for 3 years. Best A&E waiting times for 5 years. Fastest ambulance response times for half a decade. Cancer patients getting diagnosed in the shortest time on record. Lots done, more to do. That's why we're delivering neighbourhood health centres in every community to speed up care. We did that because we invested. What did they do? They broke the NHS and then they opposed the investment that we put in.
David, Leader of the Liberal Democrats.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I associate myself and my party with the comments of the Prime Minister on our wonderful late Queen? And can I also agree with him on the need to confront anti-Semitism wherever it is in our society, and also remembering Stephen Lawrence and his family? Mr Speaker, I'm sure many of us in this House were shocked by the new revelations from Ollie Robbins yesterday. He said Number 10 told him to find a plum job for Matthew Doyle, another Labour crony friends with a convicted sex offender. Mr Speaker, the Prime Minister was asked on Monday whether Number 10 had proposed any political appointments other than Mandelson. Perhaps the last few hours have jogged his memory. Will he confirm today, did he know his office was lobbying for a diplomatic job for Matthew Doyle? And were they doing it on his authority?
Mr Speaker, as I said earlier, Matthew Doyle worked for many years in public service, for me as Prime Minister and other ministers. When people leave roles in any organisation, there are very often conversations about other roles they may want to apply for. In this case, nothing came of it.
David.
Mr Speaker, the House and the public watching will note the Prime Minister failed to answer my questions. But Mr Speaker, the chaos in this government mustn't stop us from focusing on the cost of living crisis hitting our country. President Trump's idiotic war with Iran has already pushed up inflation in our country to 3.3%. And the Prime Minister knows there's far worse to come for the British people here on in. They need help now. So will the Prime Minister follow other countries and use the Treasury's extra revenues from higher fuel prices to cut rail and bus fares and slash prices at the pump by 12p a litre?
Mr Speaker, everybody can see that the conflict is causing serious economic damage in this country and countries around the world. His claim of a windfall for the government are politically misleading and economically illiterate.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, poor housing and temporary accommodation is having a devastating impact on families, their life chances, our schools and communities. Will he put the full weight of government behind ensuring that new developments in London are delivering for Londoners, not private investors and landlords, including on the Billingsgate Market site in my honourable friend's Poplar and Limehouse constituencies?
I thank her for a question. We inherited a housing crisis in London, including record numbers of children living in temporary accommodation, because the party opposite failed to build the homes that we need. Mr Speaker, we're building those homes, and I'm looking forward next week when Labour will deliver more security for tenants through our Renters' Rights Act. Can I commend Hackney Council, her council, on getting on with building affordable homes? What a stark contrast to the Green Party, who've opposed 42,000 new homes across the capital and counting.
Mr Fenton Glenn, I'm glad you've found your feet because I could hear you shouting early, so we won't do it next week. Dr Ellie Chance.
Thank you. Mr Speaker, the Prime Minister appointed Mandelson in a desperate and doomed attempt to pander to Donald Trump, despite knowing about his friendship with the paedophile Epstein and his links to foreign states. The Prime Minister resisted and then took a dismissive and extraordinarily incurious attitude to vetting, compromising national security. And now he's thrown a civil servant under the bus to save his own skin. All this from a Prime Minister who pledged to restore trust and integrity in government, but who's repeatedly betrayed the trust of voters and let the country down. Does the Prime Minister not recognise that the best thing he can do to restore trust and integrity is to take true responsibility and resign?
Mr. Speaker, let me just correct what she said. There was no dismissive attitude to develop vetting. I knew the post was subject to develop vetting. It was subject to develop vetting. What didn't happen was that I was told of the UK SV recommendation. That was a serious error of judgment. Had I been told, the appointment wouldn't have gone ahead.
Martin Rhodes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In my constituency of Glasgow North, local people in Somerston experiencing antisocial behaviour tell me that what makes the greatest difference is visible local police officers on the beat. However, since 2017, local police numbers in Glasgow have fallen by 9%, leaving 214 fewer local officers serving communities. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that visible local policing is essential to tackling antisocial behaviour and restoring confidence in our communities?
My honourable friend, Scotland deserves safer streets and more visible policing. In England and Wales, Mr. Speaker, Labour has put 3,000 more neighbourhood police officers on our streets, delivering a named police officer for every neighbourhood. The SNP government has already had 2 decades and record funding to invest in public services. If they knew how to do it, they'd have done it by now, but they haven't.
Mr. Speaker, we know that the Prime Minister has been playing fast and loose with the ministerial appointments in his chumocracy, so I want to ask him about the first one. Mr. Speaker, their boos mean nothing to me, Mr. Speaker. I've seen what makes them cheer. Yes. Jonathan Powell was appointed as the Prime Minister's special envoy to the British Indian Ocean Territories on the 6th of September, but throughout August, he held meetings with FCDO officials and was given access to classified information, including a meeting minute between the Prime Minister and the then Foreign Secretary sat next to him on the front bench today. So my question is very simple. When was Jonathan Powell appointed as the Prime Minister's special envoy to the British Indian Ocean Territory, and what security clearance did he have upon that appointment?
Let me say that Jonathan Powell is doing an excellent job for this government. He is respected across the world and playing a significant part in dealing with the huge challenges that we face.
Jenny Riddle-Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Fertiliser prices are spiralling, and it's not just down to the war in the Middle East. It's also because of the choices of the previous Conservative government who let the UK's last ammonia plant based in Billingham close in 2023. They failed to see it as a nationally critical site that was critical to the UK's food production. And instead that we are now more reliant on volatile imports. If we don't tackle this head-on, higher fertiliser costs will mean higher food prices in the UK. Can I ask the Prime Minister what this government is doing to support British farmers, and does he agree with me that all options to bring down the cost of fertiliser should be on the table, including securing British homemade ammonia once again in the UK?
Well, clearly the Middle East conflict is placing real pressure on farmers. That's why it's very important that we de-escalate. Today, the UK is hosting military planners as work continues with France and other countries to help get the Strait of Hormuz open once the ceasefire holds. We've instructed the CMA to look more closely at fertiliser and red diesel to ensure farmers are getting a fair deal. We're overhauling regulations around fertiliser to diversify supply. On her particular case, we've also taken the decision to open the carbon dioxide plant in Teesside to protect supplies, because we will always act to secure our economy.
Richard Ford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Leaders can delegate responsibility, but we cannot delegate accountability. Lord Carrington learned this in the army, and he lived it as Foreign Secretary when Argentina invaded the Falklands. In 1982, he held himself accountable for the failures of Foreign Office officials and resigned, even though he was later cleared of responsibility. Does the Right Honourable Member not believe in ministerial accountability?
Mr. Speaker, I've set out in terms what I wasn't told in relation to this process. It's clearly information that I should have been given. A UK SV recommendation with a double red flag should have been brought to my attention. It was a serious error of judgment that it wasn't. And anyone in my position would have taken exactly the decision that I took in relation to the Permanent Secretary.
Foxcroft.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Housing is one of the biggest issues in my constituency. Lewisham Council is working hard to improve this, bringing its housing stock back in-house. Non-decent homes have fallen from 1 in 4 to 1 in 10. The repairs backlog has reduced by almost 2/3 and call waiting times have fallen from 70 minutes to 4. However, leaseholders and those with cladding issues still need support. So can the Prime Minister update the House on what this government is doing in these two very vital areas?
Mr. Speaker, we're tackling the injustice of leaseholds and fixing building safety, as she rightly highlights, and I can thank her for campaigning on this over many, many years. Mr. Speaker, we're capping ground rents at £250 to cut costs for almost 4 million leasehold properties. We're investing over £5 billion to remove dangerous cladding, including over £1 billion for social housing. In Lewisham and across the country, I'm determined that everyone should have a safe and secure home.
Lincoln John.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last Thursday, a man was arrested in Laleham in my Spelthorne constituency. He'd been approaching children at the primary school, having been warned by the police not to do so. He was taken into police custody and after further examination, he was detained under the Mental Health Act. Unbelievably, he was living in an unlicensed HMO supported by the Home Office, a stone's throw from the primary school. What I would like to know, Prime Minister, is who was responsible for the risk assessment that put him there? Was it the Home Office? Was it Spelthorne Borough Council? Who screwed up and who can I hold accountable?
Can I thank him for his question? Obviously, this is a live police investigation, as he will appreciate, and I know the Asylum Minister is looking very closely at this case, and obviously I can provide him with any further information as that emerges. Can I reassure him that all accommodation must meet contractual standards, and the Home Office works with the police to manage all sites safely. Local authorities are consulted prior to any accommodation being procured and can object to any proposal. And where there's strong evidence the site is not suitable, it will not proceed.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of the main concerns North Durham residents raise with me is the vitality of local high streets. So I'm delighted that in the last year a series of new independent businesses has opened in Chesley Street, Front Street. Willow's Bakehouse, Paper and Park Bookshop, Pretty Busy Blooms, Kira Sushi Restaurant, and just this weekend, the Black Rabbit Bar, which I'm looking forward to visiting. Will the Prime Minister join me in congratulating these new businesses and outline the measures he is taking to support further regeneration of our high streets?
I'm delighted to hear about the new businesses in his area. Our high street strategy, backed by £301 million, will set out further plans to rejuvenate high streets across the country. We are putting power into the hands of local communities through our Pride in Place scheme, Mr. Speaker, including £20 million for Stanley South in his constituency. That is only possible because his community has a hard-working Labour MP and a Labour government.
Carla Lockhart.
Mr. Speaker, some 6 months ago in this House I mentioned a little boy called Teddy Jackson. Sadly, Teddy will be forever 7 because he died last week from MLD. MLD is a horrendous condition that stole Teddy's ability to walk, talk and even smile. What makes this tragedy more profound is that here in the UK we have a treatment, we have a cure, but it's only effective if the condition is identified by the simple heel prick at birth and treated immediately, because when symptoms appear, it's too late. Just a few weeks ago, the UK Screening Committee recommended it remain excluded from the heel prick. So we have a treatment, We have a commissioned service in Manchester Royal Hospital, Children's Hospital, but yet children like Teddy are still dying prematurely. Prime Minister, despite all that's going on in the world, I know he is in politics to make a change. In Teddy's memory and in the memory of all those who have died prematurely, make the change and add MLD to the simple heel prick.
Well, I do remember her raising Teddy's case very well, and I'm very saddened to hear of his passing. And I think my thoughts, and I'm sure of the whole House, are with his family and his loved ones. And I will do precisely as she asks. I'll make sure that we look at this again in light of the information she's now given to me in the course of this session.
Birthday boy Oliver Wright.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And happy St George's Day for tomorrow too. In Burnley, Padiham and Briarfield, we have a large number of ex-industrial derelict land sites crying out for regeneration and redevelopment. They're blighting communities and many are a fire risk. Our area in Britain needs housing, social, affordable, family, aspirational. We have the sites if he has the will. So will he back my campaign for a new regeneration and house building programme for Burnley, Padiham and Briarfield, tackling these derelict sites to get us building, growing and housing local people?
Yeah. Can I start by wishing him happy birthday? And I'll make sure ministers meet him to hear more detail about his particular proposal. We are committed to delivering 1.5 million homes this Parliament. We're prioritising development of brownfield sites, ensuring default answer to brownfield proposals is a yes. We will go further and faster now. Our Planning and Infrastructure Act is now law, despite being opposed by every party opposite, a coalition of blockers.
Tessama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister may be aware that in December, for the first time in over 3 decades, Defence Ministers met the families of those killed in the 1994 RAF Chinook crash on the Moluccan Tower. The Ministry of Defence promised, quote, ongoing dialogue with them. Is he also aware that despite receiving pages of new evidence presented at that meeting, which show the Chinook was not airworthy, the MOD chose not to keep its word and contacted instead the Press Association, saying no new evidence had been presented about the cause of the crash. The Prime Minister knows, because the families have written to him, as the MOD does too, the families are not seeking a public inquiry into the cause of the crash, but to know the reason why their loved ones were placed on board an aircraft, which, according to the MOD's own test pilots and engineers, was described as positively dangerous, unairworthy, and not to be relied on in any way whatsoever. And those are quotes. Will he agree to meet the families, to rebuild trust and to offer the promised dialogue the MOD clearly finds so difficult to achieve?
Can I thank her for raising this, and I will make sure this is looked at again in light of what she's raised just a moment ago, and I'll make sure that the families get the relevant meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Between 2010 and 2024, the number of children living in poverty increased by 700,000, with Tower Hamlets having one of the highest rates in the country. This Labour government's child poverty strategy will lift over 500,000 children out of poverty. But given the economic pressures caused by external shocks and its impact on the cost of living, there's a long way to go. Does the Prime Minister agree that the government should also look at setting a clear target to end child poverty for good?
Can I start by thanking her for a long record campaigning against child poverty? Child poverty stifles opportunity. It makes it harder for kids to get on in life. And we, this government, will not stand by. This is a moral mission for this government. We will make sure that no child or family is left behind through lifting the 2-child cap, expanding free school meals, free breakfast clubs, extending free childcare. More than 6,000 children in her constituency alone will benefit from the action that we're taking. And what would tourism reform do? They would plunge those children straight back into poverty. That is a disgrace.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, vigils are being held across Westminster for the 22 women who are diagnosed with lobular breast cancer every day. And, Mr. Speaker, I think we're privileged to say that some of those extraordinarily brave women are in the gallery this afternoon. When I raised this issue with the Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology, she promised to take action and not just commit words. So would the Prime Minister today commit to the lobular moonshot project's plan to fund lobular breast cancer?
can I thank him for drawing the House's attention to the vigils and the campaign, and can I acknowledge those in the gallery who are here today, and I will make sure that this is looked at to see what further we can do and that any relevant meetings are set up.
Rachel Buskell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In 1777, Bootham Park Hospital was given in trust to the people of York. Since it closed in 2015, NHS Property Services has squandered £5.5 million, almost its sale price, keeping the building empty and threatening to sell it for a luxury complex our city does not want. This much sought-after community space for charities and services would significantly benefit York residents. So will the Prime Minister now release this site so public land can be used for public good and we get Bootham back?
Well, I know that this site is of huge significance to the people of York, and I understand the site is under offer. Ministers are happy to work with the Council and my honourable friend to find the right deal for the site, taking into account the points she's made.
Sarah Poachin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Every day that the Prime Minister fails to act or even acknowledge Pakistani grooming gangs that rape and torture vulnerable white girls, more victims continue to suffer. Whilst he spends his energy forcing friends of paedophiles into top jobs, why not use that energy to stop this national disgrace?
Mr. Speaker, I spent many years prosecuting paedophiles who are now in prison, so I really don't need lectures from Reform about this.
Final question, Sonia Kumar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In 2022, my constituent, Masi Sibanda, dropped her 14-year-old son, Noah, off to nursery like any other day. Tragically, this will be the last time Masi would see her son alive. A staff member at Fairy Tale Nursery tried to get him to sleep. When Noah resisted, she covered his face with a thick blanket and used her leg to pin him down. The pressure applied to his tiny body was so extreme, it ruptured his colon. Mr. Speaker, no parent should have to endure such unimaginable loss. The sentencing has taken place. Will the PM meet with Masi to discuss how we can ensure that tragedies like this never happen again?
The case she raises is utterly tragic, and as she went through those details, I think we all would have felt the same as I do, that it must be impossible to fathom how the family must feel in relation to this awful and tragic case. I will make sure that all the necessary meetings are set up in the way that she has asked for.
That completes Prime Minister's questions. Let the front benches change over. We now come to the... Just let the benches clear. Come to the urgent question. Lee Ingham. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Every year, this country spends around £400 billion of taxpayers' money on procurement. And if we're honest, under the current complex system, we do not always spend it as wisely as we could. That is why, just before the Easter recess, I announced a major package of reforms to the procurement system. And I'm grateful to have the chance to update the House today on it. Behind these reforms, Mr. Speaker, are three principles. First, that procurement should do much more to protect national security and support British businesses. Second, that it should deliver a fairer economy. And third, that it should be simpler, fairer and open doors to businesses, small businesses and charities. To take those in turn, Mr. Speaker, this government believes it matters where things are made and who makes them. So we will issue new guidance for all government departments to make use of the national security exemptions in the Procurement Act to direct procurement to serve the national interest. We will start with 4 sectors critical to our national security: steel, shipbuilding, energy independence and AI. This will give a clear sign, Mr. Speaker, that this Labour government will back British business, and we will use both the weight of our procurement budget and the powers in the Procurement Act to do so. We will also take 2 further steps to back British businesses. First, government departments will now be required to confirm whether prime contractors are using UK steel, and they will have to explain why they are not, if so. We will also develop a new shipbuilding framework to restrict government contracts to British firms where this supports our national security interests. Mr. Speaker, the second principle of these reforms is that procurement should build a fairer economy. And the truth is that for decades, under successive governments, we have had a policy that essentially adds up to outsourcing by default. Well, Mr. Speaker, under this Labour government, the age of outsourcing will end. We will, in line with our manifesto, introduce a public interest test, and it will apply to all government departments. They will now be required to assess whether a service can be delivered more effectively in-house, and if it cannot, a clear explanation must be published. Departments will also, for the first time, be required to publish robust insourcing strategies, setting out how, over the medium term, they will build the capacity to make the biggest wave of insourcing in a generation a reality. Mr. Speaker, this marks a step change in how and who our public services are run by and for, and I am proud this Labour government is delivering it. Mr. Speaker, we will also strengthen the role of social value in procurement. Too often, this has become a mere tick-box exercise and a barrier, not an opportunity, for SMEs and start-ups. So, working with trade unions, businesses and others, we will create a new definition of social value that will underpin all government procurement. The third principle of these reforms, Mr. Speaker, is to make the procurement system simpler and fairer. I have heard too many times how the complexity, duplication and endless form filling of the current system is among the biggest barriers to SMEs and charities. So we will undertake a rapid review of all existing requirements in the procurement system, and we will see which burdens and duplications can be removed. If they are not essential, we will scrap them. We will enforce a tell us once principle.
No, you don't look at the clock. You look at me and you sit down. It's 3 minutes. I don't know who may have told you differently. There was something going wrong in advice that's been given. It's 3 minutes. I presume you're now going to come to the conclusion immediately. Yes, try the...
My apologies, Mr. Speaker. I was told 5, but I apologise. I completely apologise.
No, sit down. Let's... When I stand up, please sit down. Don't remain at the dispatch box. I'm sorry that you were told 5 minutes. I think by now that ministers should know how long they get for a statement or a UQ. It is becoming an impossible situation where ministers try to change the rules of the House. They're not my rules. These are the rules of the backbenches. Please adhere to them.
I can only apologise, Mr. Speaker. In conclusion, these reforms will back British businesses and workers. They will build a fair economy. They will simplify and open up our government procurement system. There is still much to do, but this is a big step forward, and I'm grateful to have the chance to set it out to the House today.
Ian.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A change in procurement policy that's more focused on backing British businesses, investing in Britain to help secure thousands of good unionised jobs, and by remaining community focused, the government will make sure local people are reaping the full rewards from this move. I welcome it, and I welcome the Minister's statements. Please could the Minister outline what the first steps are to deliver this procurement reform and what it will mean for manufacturers in my constituency and those in constituencies around the UK?
Can I thank her for that? And this is a point she's raised a number of times with me before around the importance of changing procurement rules. She's a tremendous champion on this. In terms of next steps, the Cabinet Office is working on new guidance that we will put before the House very shortly, I hope before the summer recess, that will sort of make flesh the commitments I've made today. And as I say, it has 3 big principles behind it: backing British businesses, creating a fairer economy, and making the system simpler and fairer for all.
Mike Wood, Shadow Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I congratulate the honourable lady on securing this urgent question. I know how rare that is for a government PPS. And I welcome the government's ambition she's not anymore, sorry, I apologise. I welcome the government's ambition to modernise public procurement, but ambition, as ever, must be matched by delivery. And there are a number of questions the Minister must answer today. The government promised transparency through a new online register of commercial agreements. When precisely will that register be live, and will it be comprehensive from day one? Ministers often speak of backing small business. Will the Minister publish in a single, accessible place every department's SME target, its latest outturn, and whether it is on track or off track? And on prompt payment, how many suppliers have actually been excluded from major contracts for failing to meet the required standards? If this strategy is truly about value for money, why has the government still not resolved the fragmentation, poor quality frameworks and poor use of data and technology that was identified by the National Audit Office? On national security, contracting authorities are now required to assess risks, not just from the prime contractors, but from associated persons and subcontractors. How many procurements have been referred for national security consideration, and how many suppliers have been excluded or challenged as a result? What assurances can the Minister give that public contracts are not still flowing into supply chains with links to hostile states? And what assessment has the Minister made of the EU's emerging Buy Europe policies? Isn't this a protectionist barrier by the European Union? And finally, if social value is now mandatory at 10%, what assessment has been made of the risk that this adds cost and complexity, and particularly for SMEs? I know the House will want clear answers.
For those questions. Let me try and answer a few of them. Firstly, on SMEs and department spend. I mean, as I say, part of this package is to try and support SMEs and to make sure they have a greater chance of winning contracts. We did publish the departmental spends the day before recess. I know there was a lot going on, but we have published them. They are there, and they show a very ambitious step forward. I believe around £7 billion of government contracts will go to SMEs as a result of those changes. I'm very proud of what we are doing. It's the first time government have done it, and we've helped drive that through. We've worked very hard on that. He asked about Buy Europe. Look, this is not in conflict with any of our international agreements. It's obviously not in conflict also with our negotiations with the EU that my right honourable friend is leading on, and we work closely on that. But at the heart of this, though, is a recognition that we need to use our procurement budget within international law and with international regulations to do more to support our industries. And that is quite the right thing to do, and I hope we can get cross-party support. He also asked me about social value. Again, I think he was implying that we are making this mandatory. It is already mandatory, and it is already weighted at 10% within the contracting system. I'm not changing that here. What I'm saying is I'm changing the definition of social value. So it will do more to support communities, and it will do more to make sure that it really works and it really supports communities for doing it. So there's no change on that. He asked me a couple of specific questions around national security points. I will get back to him if that's okay. But in general terms, I hope we can get cross-party support on this. The Procurement Act was passed with cross-party support. It was a step forward, but this is the next big step in trying to make sure we do much more with that budget to support Britain.
Deb John.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And let me applaud the government's move to use the £400 billion of public procurement, almost 1/8 of British GDP, in the interests of the British people and the British economy. And the Select Committee for Science, Innovation and Technology has often heard that a government contract is worth more than a government grant to the start-ups and spin-outs, which are so important to our economy. Can you also confirm that this approach will be joined up with our strategy for sovereign capability, so that we do not find ourselves once again in the position where the Ministry of Defence awards a contract without competition to a large US AI company, Palantir, when there are UK companies desperate for that kind of investment?
Can I thank her for that? And obviously she brings a huge level of expertise and background on this. And just to reassure her, part of the package I'm announcing and announced before Easter is to try and help our sovereign AI industry, and it is to help science and technology as well, and to really boost startups. Because a lot of the stories I've heard in the time I've been doing this job. It's about how the procurement rules work fine if you have a large procurement part of your company to try and win them. It's not so good if you're a startup, if you're a voluntary group, if you're trying to win your way into government contracts. We should be doing much more to help them. And yes, we are joining this up across government. It will be with the industrial strategy and also with our steel strategy I spoke about earlier as well.
Lisa Smart, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Very much, Mr. Speaker. We need to do far more to back British small businesses through public procurement, both to boost growth and to ensure our own national security. Public procurement amounts to hundreds of billions a year. The Procurement Act was meant to ensure more of that money reached British small businesses, but in practice, for many, they report it's made things worse. Payment rules are being flouted by middlemen who face no consequences. Suppliers who complain are threatened with losing future work. Bad debts are mounting. This is public money disappearing into a vacuum and a security risk. There are businesses asking, what is the point of legislation that rogue traders can ignore with complete impunity while loyal British SMEs are being pushed out of the market they built? Does the Minister agree that the target for government spending with small businesses should be far higher than the current level? And could he explain when will the payment reporting transparency be implemented?
Thank you very much. Look, I basically agree with her assessment of the procurement system and how it doesn't do what it should. As I say, £400 billion of taxpayers' money is being spent here. We need to make sure we spend it, every pound of that, to support British industry as far as we can, and to support jobs and deliver fairness, and to support SMEs on that as well. I would just point out, though, I think the Procurement Act did help SMEs. It did make progress towards it, but it doesn't go far enough. And you know, it's not the job of this government to defend the status quo. It's the job of this government to change it. So we will do that. I will come back to her on the specific point around payment thresholds.
Gareth Snell.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and congratulations to my honourable friend and neighbour from Staffordshire for securing this question. Could I ask the Minister very simply, the government's taking the right steps towards this procurement strategy, but there is a lot more that could be done if you wanted to truly buy British, back British and build British. That could start with government car service. He will know from written parliamentary questions he sent to me that 1/3 of the government car service is used by foreign cars. He will know that police services in this country use foreign-made cars. He will know that we import bricks in this country to build houses that are funded by Homes England money by taxpayers. So can he look at the easy wins that he could do by looking at how the government is a consumer of products to reorientate that spend this week towards British companies?
Can I thank him for that? Look, there are few greater champions of a Buy British agenda than my honourable friend, although there are a few of us in government as well. And look, we are trying to make progress on that. What I'm setting out here is what I can do with government guidance and what I can do by using the exemptions that already exist in national security restrictions. We haven't jumped to legislation. I'm trying to use the powers that I have. The point he's making, though, is about a bigger agenda that we, hopefully can get to drive forward more support for British industry. This is the start of it. It is not the end, and we will work with him on doing it.
Julian.
Too often, consumers buy products which, when they get to examine them, turn out to have been manufactured in places like China. What safeguards has the government got in its own new procurement strategy that there are no concealed foreign supply chain components in the contracts that it intends to award? And why are the SMEs or any company that is bidding having to demonstrate trade union recognition if they might have a workforce that doesn't require this?
Minister.
Can I thank him for that? On the first point, look, we do have, DBT I think has lead over it, but we do have robust processes in place on supply chains. The announcement I made before Easter doesn't refer to that, doesn't change that, so it's sticking with the existing protections we have there and the existing regulations of the Procurement Act. What I'm talking about here is how we can use those powers to direct departments and use government's buying power to do more on it. On his union point, I'm sorry, I missed the very end of his point. There is nothing in here to change union recognition within the procurement system. That can already be weighted within the social value requirement. But what it does do is make a really important step on insourcing around government departments, which I'm incredibly proud of that this government's doing and is part of the manifesto we were elected on.
Christine Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the Minister for the changes, which are a welcome vote of confidence in UK business and industry, and I welcome the rapid review of existing requirements, which we know can slow down the procurement process, leading to frustration and inefficiencies all round. But ahead of International Workers' Memorial Day, will he commit to having inclusive PPE as a specification in any new public sector procurement contracts and lead the way in improving workplace safety?
Minister.
Can I thank her for this? And this is not the first time my honourable friend has raised this. We have met on it as well. She's championing this case. And it is a really important one because it addresses an iniquity that many workers feel. We are working, the Cabinet Office we are working on this point. We are looking at it. Our view at the moment is that mandation is not the right way forward and that we can work with industry to try and roll this out. But look, the Qualities Law already protects and makes sure that this should be delivered. I accept, because she's made the case incredibly powerfully, that that is not always happening. But I'm very keen to keep working with her, GMB Trade Union and others on this issue.
James White.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Spending on public procurement was £400 billion last year. So I'd like to ask the Minister a question I asked his predecessor over a year ago, which she was unable to answer then. What is the government's precise savings target from that budget?
Minister.
One excellent question. I'm afraid I'm going to have to get back to him. I don't know the answer. This is just say there is nothing in the announcement I've made that is requiring additional Treasury funding. It is within existing budgets. But the point he makes is a good one, so I will come back to him if that's okay.
Rachel Taylor.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can the Minister join me in congratulating Bedworth Company, Toy Kenning and Spencer, who have a proud history of ribbon weaving and supplying ribbons for insignia and medals to the Queen, the King and the Government for many years.